Welcome to Simplified UPSC by PPP, where we listen, learn, and grow together. Detailed lecture notes in English and Hindi, plus practice questions for prelims and mains, only on our Telegram channel. Link in description. Like and subscribe for more.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are undertaking a really deep dive into something foundational but often quite murky: the complex web of institutions involved in environmental governance. These aren't just abstract concepts. We're talking about the actual organizations, the laws, the courts that shape the environment around us.
That's absolutely right. And the source material we're working from today is pretty dense. It's that specialized regulatory text that really defines how conservation works in the modern world.
Right.
So our goal today is to cut through that complexity. We want to move beyond just recognizing environmental problems to really pinpointing the who and the how of environmental action. You know, from the policy stage right down to legal enforcement. Precision is key here.
Exactly. Our mission is to give you, the listener, the operational blueprint for environmental stewardship in India and how it connects globally. We're going to unpack the mandates, the legal origins, the day-to-day realities of key Indian players like the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, the NGT, the pollution control boards, and also the big international ones like IUCN and UNEP. We want you to understand where the leverage points are in this whole system.
Indeed. And it's crucial we establish the legal footing for these organizations. We need to be clear about the difference between, say, the main ministries, the specialized statutory bodies set up by specific acts of parliament, and the independent judicial bodies that are there for oversight and accountability.
Okay, let's get started then. We'll begin right at the top with the cornerstone of environmental policy in India. That's the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, or MoEFCC, as everyone knows it. What does it actually mean when we call the MoEFCC the nodal agency?
Being the nodal agency means it's the central hub, the single point of coordination for everything environmental. So the MoEFCC is responsible for planning, promoting, and regulating environmental policy across the entire country.
So all major policies, international agreements, climate change strategies, they all flow through this one ministry.
Pretty much, yes. It's the architect, you could say, of the national environmental strategy. It sets the overall direction.
Okay, but a ministry in Delhi can't possibly enforce complex rules everywhere, like on every single coastline, right? How does the MoEFCC make sure its big policies actually translate into action on the ground? What gives it that enforcement power?
Well, that's where delegation comes in, and it's backed by some pretty powerful legal tools. A really critical example is coastal zone regulation, protecting that fragile strip where land meets sea.
Right, very sensitive areas.
Extremely. And the MoEFCC has specific delegated authority here. They set up what are called the Coastal Zone Management Authorities, or CZMAs, and these exist at the national level, but also at the state and union territory level too.
Okay, CZMAs. And are these just advisory panels, or do they have real power? What's the legal basis?
Oh, they have real statutory muscle. They're not just advisory. These CZMAs get their powers delegated under Section 5 of the big one, the Environmental Protection Act of 1986.
The Foundational Act?
Exactly. And the mandate is very clear, very enforceable. They have to take measures to protect and improve the quality of the coastal environment. And crucially, they are tasked with preventing, abating, and controlling pollution, specifically in those coastal zones. So it's a decentralized system, but it's legally backed, vital for implementation.
Makes sense. Now, beyond just regulation and enforcement, the MoEFCC also has a role in building public awareness, right? Connecting science with the people. The sources mention a really interesting initiative, something about a train, the Science Express.
Ah, yes, the Science Express Biodiversity Special, or ABS. That's a brilliant public outreach program, actually. It's basically an innovative mobile exhibition. On a specially designed 16-coach air-conditioned train. It travels right across India. Its whole mission is to create awareness about the country's amazing biodiversity, the conservation efforts underway, and, the challenges we face.
That sounds like a massive logistical challenge. Who does the ministry partner with to make an exhibition on wheels happen?
It's a great example of different departments working together. The MoEFCC collaborates with the Department of Science and Technology, the DST, on this project.
Ah, DST.
Yeah. So the SCBS is essentially a traveling classroom. It uses interactive exhibits, multimedia, all sorts of things to bring complex ideas like climate change adaptation, species protection directly to communities, maybe places that wouldn't normally get access to that kind of information. It's about linking policy with scientific literacy on the ground.
That really highlights how environmental protection isn't just one thing. It needs policy, science, education, all working together. Okay, let's shift gears slightly. We've talked about the MoEFCC, the nodal ministry, but the system also relies heavily on specialized statutory bodies, like the NTCA for tigers or the NBA for biodiversity. Why create these separate bodies? Why not just have departments within the ministry handle everything?
That's a fundamental point about how Indian governance is structured, particularly in complex areas like the environment. The main reason is the need for functional independence, focused expertise, and, very importantly, legal permanence.
Okay, break that down. What does statutory basis really give them?
When an organization has a statutory basis, it means it was created by a specific act of Parliament. This act gives it defined powers, a specific mandate. And crucially, that mandate can't just be changed easily by, say, a ministerial reshuffle or a change in government policy overnight.
So it provides stability and focus.
Exactly. It ensures continuity, clarity of purpose, and a degree of independence in how it operates. These bodies are set up to do a specific job, with the legal backing to do it.
Right. Let's look at a key example then. The National Biodiversity Authority, the NBA.
Okay, the NBA. It's a really crucial body. It was established to implement the Biological Diversity Act of 2002. Now, this act has three main goals, all interconnected.
Which are?
First, conserve biological diversity. Second, ensure the sustainable use of its components. And third, and this is very important, ensure the fair and equitable sharing of benefits that come from using India's genetic resources.
That third one, the access and benefit sharing, or ABS, sounds particularly tricky, especially with globalization and companies looking for resources.
Yeah.
How is the NBA structured to actually manage this across such a huge and diverse country like India?
The Act sets up a pretty robust three-tier structure to handle this. Think of it vertically. At the very top, you have the NBA, the national body. Then below that, you have state biodiversity boards, or SPBs, in each state. And then right down at the grassroots level, you have biodiversity management committees, BMCs.
So it flows from national policy right down to the local communities.
That's the idea. It ensures that governance connects national strategy with local realities and local knowledge holders.
Let's focus on that core ABS function. This is really about preventing biopiracy, isn't it? How does it work?
Precisely. Preventing biopiracy is a key driver. The most critical part of its mandate is the access and benefit sharing mechanism. You need to look at sections 19 and 21 of the Act. These are the real teeth.
Okay, sections 19 and 21, what do they say?
They stipulate that anyone, whether it's an Indian entity or a foreign one who wants to get intellectual property rights, like a patent or a trademark, based on biological resources or associated traditional knowledge that they got from India, they must get prior approval from the NBA first.
Prior approval. Why is that step so critical? What kind of past problems is this designed to fix?
It's designed to stop biopiracy, plain and simple. That's the unauthorized use of biological resources or maybe traditional knowledge held by communities for commercial profit without giving anything back, no compensation, no recognition to the community or the country where it originated.
Right, like companies patenting traditional medicine.
Exactly that kind of thing. So the NBA's prior approval mechanism ensures that before any commercialization happens, there's an agreement in place. An agreement that ensures the benefits derived from Indian genetic resources or knowledge linked to them are shared fairly and equitably. Usually this involves sharing with the local communities who have often conserved and understood these resources for generations. It's a powerful legal check against exploitation.
Okay, that clarifies the NBA's role significantly. Now, moving into part 2, this is where things get, I think, really interesting. We're shifting from the broader policy and resource management framework to specific high-stakes areas like species protection and legal enforcement. Let's start with tigers, the National Tiger Conservation Authority, or NTCA.
Right, the NTCA. This body was specifically constituted as a statutory authority. It came about through the Wildlife Protection Amendment Act of 2006.
And why the amendment? Why a dedicated body just for tigers?
Well, there was a growing realization, a quite serious one around that time, that simply declaring areas as protected wasn't enough to save the tiger. There was a need for dedicated, high-level, centralized oversight, specifically focused on tiger conservation. So its core function is to really aid and push for the implementation of tiger conservation measures across all tiger reserves.
But they do more than just advise or help, don't they? They have significant regulatory power, especially when it comes to defining and protecting the tiger reserves themselves.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Their regulatory teeth are quite formidable. While state governments are the ones who formally notify an area as a tiger reserve, they do so based on recommendations from the NTCA.
Okay.
But here's the crucial part. the restriction on changing that status. Once a reserve is notified, it's got strong legal protection. A state government cannot de-notify a tiger reserve or even alter its boundaries significantly.
Unless
It's deemed absolutely necessary in the public interest. And even then, it requires the explicit approval of both the NTCA and another important body, the National Board for Wildlife, or NBWL.
the NBWL. We've touched on it. So this dual approval acts as a major check on state actions.
A massive check. It ensures central oversight on any decision that could potentially reduce or compromise land dedicated to tiger conservation. It makes it very difficult to chip away at these reserves.
Okay, let's clarify the NBWL's role then. You mentioned it works alongside the NTCA in these critical decisions. What exactly is the NBWL and how does it fit in?
Right. The National Board for Wildlife, NBWL, is also a statutory body established under the Maine Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. Think of it as the apex advisory body to the central government on all matters concerning wildlife conservation in general, not just tigers.
Broader scope than NTCA.
Much broader. And its composition is really significant. It's chaired by the Prime Minister of India.
The PM chairs it. That signals its importance.
Absolutely. Yeah, while the NTCA has that specific focus on tigers and their reserves, the NBWL provides that overarching national-level approval and policy direction for wildlife. Its approval is needed for major decisions, like denotification or allowing non-forestry activities within protected areas and eco-sensitive zones. They work in tandem on tiger reserve issues.
Understood. Now, back to the NTCA. Declaring reserves and setting rules is one thing, but how do we know if the management on the ground is actually effective? How does the NTCA measure success?
That's where accountability mechanisms come in. The NTCA conducts something called the Management Effective Evaluation, or ME. Yes, Management Effective Evaluation. They do this periodically, often in collaboration with the Wildlife Institute of India, or WII, which provides scientific expertise. The MEE is basically a systematic assessment process. It's critical for figuring out how well the protected areas, especially tiger reserves, are actually being managed. It's not just about counting tigers, though that's part of it. It looks at things like patrol effectiveness, how well communities are involved, resource allocation, infrastructure quality, the whole management picture.
And what happens with the results of this ME? Are there consequences?
Yes, there are. Based on the ME criteria and scoring, the reserves are categorized into 4 performance levels. Very good, good, fair, or the one nobody wants, poor.
Poor.
Right. Having a reserve publicly ranked as core creates significant pressure. It provides justification for targeted interventions, changes in management, perhaps increased funding or different strategies. It shows that the evaluation isn't just an academic exercise. It's meant to be a tool for accountability and, hopefully, improvement.
Okay, very systematic. Now, let's move from tigers to another specialized body, one that made quite a splash with a ruling based on ethics. The Central Zoo Authority, or CZA.
Yes, the CZA. Its primary role, as the name suggests, is to oversee the functioning of zoos across India, ensuring they meet certain standards for animal welfare and conservation breeding.
But their mandate went into some really profound ethical territory, didn't it? Specifically about dolphins and other cetaceans.
It did. That was quite a landmark move, globally even. The CZA issued a major policy circular based on scientific understanding of cetacean intelligence and behavior. We're talking dolphins, whales, porpoises.
What was the core finding or determination that led to this?
The CZA, based on scientific evidence, stated quite unequivocally that dolphins are highly intelligent and sensitive creatures. And based on this, they argued dolphins should legally be viewed as non-human persons who possess specific rights.
Wow, non-human persons. That's a very strong legal and ethical stance for an animal. What did that imply for CZA policy regarding zoos or entertainment?
Well, it implies these animals have a level of complexity, self-awareness, and social intelligence that means they deserve protection beyond just being treated as property or exhibits. As a direct consequence, the CZA deemed that keeping them in captivity primarily for commercial entertainment purposes was morally unacceptable.
Why unacceptable?
Because the science showed that confinement in small pools fundamentally alters their natural behaviors, causes extreme stress, significantly shortens their lives, and is basically cruel given their intelligence and social needs. So, following this ethical determination, the CZA mandated all state governments to reject any proposals for establishing new dolphinariums.
So a complete ban.
Effectively, yes. It banned the import or capture of any cetacean species for commercial entertainment, public exhibition, or interaction purposes anywhere in India. This decision put the inherent rights and nature of the species itself right at the center of the policy. a very powerful assertion of ethical governance by a statutory body.
That is truly remarkable. Okay, shifting now towards active law enforcement against wildlife crime. We have a specialized agency for this, the Wildlife Crime Control Bureau, or WCCB.
Yes, the WCCB. It was established specifically to tackle a growing problem, organized wildlife crime. Its main purpose is to strengthen the enforcement of laws against poaching and the illegal trade in wildlife parts and products.
And why a separate bureau? Can't forest departments or police handle this?
The issue is that organized wildlife crime is often transnational. It involves sophisticated networks operating across state and even international borders. Local enforcement agencies might lack the resources, jurisdiction, or specialized intelligence capabilities to tackle these large syndicates effectively.
So the WCCB provides that coordinated, specialized response.
Exactly. It fills that critical gap. Its mandate includes collecting and sharing intelligence specifically related to wildlife crime trends and networks, maintaining a centralized database of wildlife crime and criminals, and coordinating actions between different state and central enforcement agencies.
Does it work internationally too?
Yes. Importantly, it also assists foreign authorities and international organizations in tackling cross-border wildlife crime. This makes it a crucial player in fighting the global illegal wildlife trade, which threatens species worldwide.
Okay, vital work. Finally, in this section on specialized bodies, let's look at pollution control, specifically the Central Pollution Control Board, CPCB, and its state-level counterparts, the State Pollution Control Boards, SPCBs. These are the day-to-day regulators of industrial pollution, aren't they?
They absolutely are. They form the backbone of the pollution regulatory framework in India. It's important to know their statutory origins. The CPCB and the SPCBs were established under two foundational environmental laws, the Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act of 1974, and then their powers were extended under the Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act of 1981.
So, born from the Water and Air Acts, what are their main tasks?
Their core functions include setting environmental standards for pollutants in air and water, continuously monitoring the quality of air and water across the country, ensuring industries comply with these standards through inspections and permits, and advising the central and state governments on pollution prevention and control strategies.
And they also play a really crucial role in the Environmental Impact Assessment, or EIA, process. Maybe we should quickly define EIA for listeners before talking about the board's role.
Good idea. So the Environmental Impact Assessment, EIA, is essentially a study. It's a process mandated under the Environmental Protection Act, 1986. The goal is to predict the potential environmental, social, and even economic consequences of a proposed development project before any decision is made to approve it. It's meant to be a preventive tool, a way to anticipate and mitigate harm.
A safeguard before construction starts. And within that EIA process, the SPCBs have a specific job related to public input, which can often be a real point of conflict, right?
Absolutely. The state pollution control boards are responsible for conducting the public hearing component of the EIA. This is the formal stage designed to bring in local voices and concerns.
How does that work?
The relevant SPCB has to ensure that a notice for the public hearing is published widely in the area. It needs to be in at least 2 newspapers circulated in that region, and critically, one of those must be in the local vernacular language.
To ensure accessibility.
Precisely. The notice invites the public to submit their views, comments, and objections regarding the project's potential impacts, usually within a 30-day window from when the notice is published. The SPCB then conducts the hearing itself, documenting the concerns raised. This vernacular requirement is key to making sure the process isn't just for English speakers or the elite, but accessible to the communities potentially most affected.
So the CPCB and SPCBs are the technical experts, setting the rules based on the Water and Air Acts, monitoring compliance, and facilitating that crucial public feedback loop in the EIA process.
That sums up their regulatory role nicely, yes.
Yeah. Okay, now let's broaden our view. These national bodies, with their specific laws and functions, obviously don't exist in isolation. They interact constantly with global environmental agendas, international treaties, and various organizations operating on a world stage. It's fascinating to see how these international players influence or support national efforts.
That global connection is absolutely vital. It influences funding, sets international standards, provides scientific data, and sometimes adds pressure for accountability. Let's start with a really significant one. The International Union for Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources, better known as IUCN.
IUCN. What makes it stand out among global environmental groups?
Well, it has a very unique structure. It's a membership union, but its members include both sovereign states, government agencies, and civil society organizations, so NGOs.
So governments and NGOs together in one body.
Exactly. This hybrid structure gives it immense credibility and convening power, even though it doesn't have direct enforcement capabilities like a treaty body might. Its core mission is broad: to influence, encourage, and assist societies worldwide to conserve the integrity and diversity of nature and ensure that any use of natural resources is equitable and ecologically sustainable.
And it's most famous for one particular product, right? The global standard for assessing species risk.
Absolutely. That would be the IUCN Red List of threatened species, often just called the Red List. This is widely recognized as the most comprehensive, objective global inventory of the conservation status of plant, animal, and fungi species.
How does it work?
It uses a very rigorous set of scientific criteria to evaluate the extinction risk of thousands of species. Based on the assessment, species are categorized into 9 groups, ranging from least concern all the way up to critically endangered, extinct in the wild, and extinct. It's the go-to source for understanding extinction risk globally.
And IUCN also helps standardize terminology used in conservation worldwide. Can you give an example?
Yes, they play a key role in definitions. A classic example is the definition of a marine protected area, or MPA. The IUCN definition is globally accepted. It's any area of intertidal or subtidal terrain, along with its overlying water and associated flora, fauna, and cultural features, which has been reserved by law or other effective means to protect part or all of the enclosed environment. This kind of standard definition helps countries implement conservation measures consistently.
Okay, very influential. Now let's turn to the main environmental arm within the United Nations system, the United Nations Environment Program, or UNEP.
Right, UNEP. Its headquarters are in Nairobi, Kenya. UNEP is essentially the highest level UN body focused specifically on environmental issues. Its mandate is huge: setting the global environmental agenda, promoting the coherent implementation of the environmental dimension of sustainable development across the entire UN system, and acting as an authoritative advocate for the global environment.
And the source material suggests UNEP isn't just about agendas. It has had direct operational involvement or influence in India, specifically concerning energy and climate goals.
Yes, that's correct. It shows UNEP's role can be quite practical. For instance, UNEP was involved way back in April 2003 with the Indian Solar Loan Program, which aimed to help mobilize financing for solar energy projects.
Okay, early support for renewables.
Exactly. And more recently, in terms of tracking commitments, UNEP's emission gap report from 2014 was significant. It was cited as recognizing that India was actually on course at that time to achieve its voluntary goal of reducing the emission intensity of its GDP.
That was the 25% reduction pledge by 2020.
Yes, compared to the 2005 level. So UNEP plays that role of monitoring and reporting on whether countries are meeting their international climate commitments. They act as a sort of global scorekeeper.
That makes sense for the main UN body. Now let's switch focus slightly to the non-governmental organizations, the NGOs. Groups like the Worldwide Fund for Nature, WWF, how do they fit into this picture? They don't make laws, but they clearly have influence.
NGOs like WWF play absolutely vital roles. They often work on the ground with conservation projects, they conduct research that feeds into policy debates, they raise public awareness, and importantly, they act as watchdogs, putting pressure on both governments and corporations. WWF is one of the largest globally recognized conservation organizations focusing on wilderness preservation and reducing human impact on the environment.
The source gives a specific, quite alarming example involving WWF's research on oil palm plantations. This really highlights the conflict between global commodities and local ecosystems, doesn't it?
It really does. WWF's estimates and reports were widely cited regarding the rapid and often unsustainable expansion of oil palm plantations, particularly in Southeast Asia. They predicted significant tropical forest loss, potentially up to 4 million hectares by 2020, much of it in critical biodiversity hotspots.
And the impact.
This directly impacts endangered species that rely on those forests, like Sumatran tigers and orangutans. And the connection to India, as highlighted in the source, is that India is one of the world's largest importers of palm oil. So WWF's research directly links consumption patterns in one part of the world to habitat destruction and species endangerment in another. It makes the global connection very clear.
A stark reminder of global interconnectedness. Now, to make sure we cover the main players mentioned, the sources also briefly note 2 other significant international NGOs, BirdLife International and Greenpeace. What are their specific niches?
Right. BirdLife International, as the name suggests, has a specific focus: the conservation of birds and their habitats across the globe. They operate as a global partnership of conservation organizations. Why birds? Because birds are often excellent indicators of broader ecosystem health. Their work is crucial in identifying and protecting important bird and biodiversity areas, or IBAs.
Okay, birds as indicators. And Greenpeace.
Greenpeace is probably one of the most well-known environmental campaigning organizations globally. They are famous for their direct action methods and high-profile advocacy campaigns. They tend to focus on large-scale global issues, things like climate change, deforestation, protecting oceans, campaigning against nuclear power and toxic waste. They're often very confrontational in their approach to raise awareness and force change.
So WWF focusing on conservation projects and research, BirdLife on birds and habitats, and Greenpeace on direct action and campaigning. Together, these NGOs ensure environmental issues stay on the public and political agenda globally.
Exactly. They complement the work of governmental bodies and intergovernmental organizations like IUCN and UNEP, often pushing them to be more ambitious.
Okay, this seems like a good point to pause and really solidify our understanding of the Indian national framework. There's one distinction that often seems to trip people up when they're studying environmental governance in India. Let's tackle it head on. What is the fundamental functional difference between the Central Pollution Control Board, CPCB, and its state counterparts, the SPCBs on the one hand, and the National Green Tribunal, NGT, on the other? They both deal with pollution, environment, enforcement, but they operate very differently, don't they?
Ah, yes. This is probably the single most important conceptual distinction to grasp from this entire deep dive. It's absolutely critical. They seem related because they both deal with environmental problems, but they represent completely different branches of state power. One is essentially an executive regulatory body. The other is a judicial body.
Okay, let's break that down. Remind us again about the CPCB and SPCBs. What's their core role in the system? Think executive functions.
Right. The CPCB and the SPCBs are the technical, executive, and regulatory arms of the government for pollution control. They operate under the broad oversight of the Ministry of Environment, Forest, and Climate Change, MoEFCC. Their authority, as we said, comes primarily from the Water Act 1974 and the Air Act 1981.
And their jobs are?
Their jobs include setting the actual pollution standards, defining how much pollution is permissible. They conduct ongoing monitoring of air and water quality using scientific methods. They are responsible for enforcing these standards, checking if industries are complying, issuing permits, potentially ordering closures if they're not, and they advise the government on pollution-related policy matters. Think of them as the environmental rulemakers and the day-to-day inspectors or monitors. They're also the ones running the public hearings for EIAs.
Okay, rulemakers, monitors, advisors. Now, how does the National Green Tribunal, the NGT, established much later under the NGT Act of 2010, fit into this? How is its function fundamentally different?
The NGT is fundamentally different because it's a specialized quasi-judicial body. Its role is adjudication. It doesn't set the pollution standards. It interprets and enforces environmental laws and settles disputes. It essentially functions as an environmental court system for India.
An environmental court, so its purpose is?
Its purpose is to provide effective and speedy legal remedies for victims of environmental damage or pollution. It resolves disputes related to environmental laws. It can award compensation for damages to people or property, order restitution of the environment, and impose penalties on polluters.
And why was it felt necessary to create a whole separate tribunal for this? Couldn't the regular courts handle it?
The rationale was twofold. First, environmental cases often involve complex scientific and technical issues that require specialized expertise, which regular courts might lack. The NGT Act mandates that the tribunal includes both judicial members, like judges, and expert members with scientific or technical backgrounds. Second, there was a need for faster resolution of environmental cases, as delays in regular courts could lead to irreversible environmental damage. The NGT was established specifically to ensure the realization of the fundamental right to a healthy environment.
Ah, that crucial link. The courts have interpreted the right to life under Article 21 of the Constitution to include the right to a healthy environment, correct?
Exactly. The Supreme Court rulings establishing this link were a major driver behind the NGT Act. The NGT exists to give teeth to that judicially recognized fundamental right. It provides a dedicated expert forum for citizens to seek justice when that right is violated.
So, to summarize the core difference, CPCB, SPCB set the rules, monitor compliance, and act as the executive regulator. The NGT acts as the specialized court, interpreting the laws, settling disputes, providing remedies, and imposing penalties when those rules are broken or rights are violated. One regulates, the other adjudicates.
That's the essence of it. Regulator versus adjudicator. It's a crucial distinction for understanding how environmental governance functions or is supposed to function in India. Right, before we get into the bigger picture analysis and challenges, let's quickly recap some key factual takeaways for each major organization we've discussed. Think of these as our prelims pointers, the absolute must-knows for each body's identity and core function.
Okay, hit us with the quick-fire institutional ID check.
All right, National Board for Wildlife, NBWL. Remember, it's primarily an advisory body, but statutory under the Wildlife Act 72. Key feature, chaired by the Prime Minister. Critical for approvals within protected areas.
Got it. NBWL Advisory, PM Chair.
National Tiger Conservation Authority, NTCA. This one is statutory, created by the 2006 amendment. Its focus is tigers. Key function, conducting the Management Effective Evaluation, MEE, with WII to check how well reserves are run.
NTCA Statutory Tigers, MEE.
Okay. National Biodiversity Authority, NBA. Also statutory under the Biodiversity Act 2002. Its unique role is regulating access and benefit sharing, ABS. Remember the prior approval needed for using biological resources for IPR.
NBA Statutory, ABS, prior approval.
Central Zoo Authority, CZA. Statutory body regulating zoos. The standout point. Its ethical ruling declaring dolphins non-human persons and banning their use in entertainment.
CZA Zoos, dolphin ruling, non-human persons, memorable.
National Green Tribunal, NGT. Definitely statutory judicial body from the NGT Act 2010. Its entire existence is linked to enforcing the right to a healthy environment under Article 21. It's the Environmental Court.
NGT Statutory Judicial, Article 21 link.
IUCN. International Union for Conservation of Nature. Unique structure members are both governments and NGOs. Famous product. The Red List of Threatened Species also defines key terms like Marine Protected Areas, MPA.
IUCN Global Hybrid Membership Red List definitions. Okay.
Those are some of the absolute core identifiers.
Excellent quick summary. That lays out the who and what very clearly. Now let's pivot to the mains insights. We've just described this really impressive, complex, multi-layered institutional architecture. Decades of legislation have built up this system of ministries, statutory bodies, courts, all designed to protect the environment.
It's good on paper, certainly.
Exactly. But the source material and, frankly, lived experience points to some major systemic problems and how effective this whole structure actually is in practice. What's the fundamental issue we keep running into? Is it this implementation gap?
Yes, implementation gap is the phrase often used, and it really captures the core challenge. It's the persistent failure of these well-intentioned policies and strong statutory laws to consistently translate into effective preventive protection on the ground, the gap between the law on the books and the reality.
And we see evidence of this gap in the NGT's own work, right? The source mentioned a specific, quite worrying statistic about EIA cases.
That's right. It's a stark indicator. The source highlights that across all the cases filed before the National Green Tribunal, remember, the specialized court, a very significant portion, around 41%, were cases where the NGT itself found fundamental flaws or shortcomings in the original environmental impact assessment reports.
41%. So in nearly half the environmental disputes serious enough to reach the NGT, the initial assessment, the very tool designed to prevent problems, was faulty.
That's what the data suggests. It implies that the EIA process, which is supposed to be this rigorous preventive safeguard managed initially under the MoEFCC and SPCBs, is often proving inadequate. Or perhaps, as critics suggest, it's sometimes manipulated or rushed. This failure at the assessment stage inevitably leads to conflicts, environmental damage, and then necessitates costly, time-consuming judicial intervention by the NGT later on. It points to a weakness in the executive oversight part of the process.
It really undermines the preventive principle. And beyond the faulty EIAs, the source also mentioned a need within the NGT itself, a capacity issue.
Yes, there's a recognized need, mentioned in the analysis, to strengthen the composition of the NGT. Specifically, the argument is that it needs more judicial members who also possess specialized expertise in environmental law and science.
Why is that specialization so important for the judges, too?
Because environmental cases are often incredibly complex, involving technical data, scientific uncertainty, and intricate legal precedents specific to environmental jurisprudence. Having judges with deeper environmental expertise, alongside the technical expert members, is seen as crucial for improving the quality, consistency, and speed of the NGT's judgments and its overall effectiveness in providing environmental justice.
Makes sense. Now, There also seems to be a deeper tension at play, almost an ideological one, related to how environmental violations are handled. It comes down to a clash between two principles, doesn't it?
Yes, this goes to the heart of the debate around environmental regulation versus economic development. The foundational legal principle is supposed to be the polluter pays principle.
Which means?
Simply put, the entity responsible for causing pollution or environmental damage should bear the costs of cleaning it up, compensating victims, and restoring the environment. It internalizes the environmental cost into the polluter's actions.
That sounds fair. But what's the competing idea that critics worry about?
Critics argue that sometimes regulatory approaches, particularly in how EIA violations are handled or how penalties are structured, seem to implicitly follow what they call the pay and pollute principle.
Pay and pollute, how does that work?
The implication is that sometimes powerful actors might treat environmental regulations not as absolute lines that cannot be crossed, but as potential costs of doing business. They might violate norms, perhaps deliberately, anticipating that they can later get the violation regularized or excused by paying a fine or penalty. The fine, in this view, becomes just another operational expense, rather than a true deterrent ensuring preventive compliance.
So it suggests the penalty isn't high enough or the enforcement isn't strict enough to genuinely deter violations, allowing damage to happen first.
That's the core criticism. It points to an ongoing tension where the executive branch, facing immense pressure for economic growth and development projects, might sometimes favor approaches that critics feel weaken environmental protection and undermine the spirit, if not the letter, of the laws Parliament has enacted. It suggests a potential lack of political will to enforce the polluter pays principle rigorously in all cases.
So let's bring it all together. We've mapped out this incredibly detailed legal and institutional framework. The MoEFCC at the top setting policy, specialized bodies like NTCA protecting tigers, NBA guarding biodiversity, CPCB, SPCBs monitoring pollution, and the NGT standing as the ultimate judicial backstop. It's comprehensive.
On paper. Yet, despite all this, the reality seems to be persistent environmental violations, significant challenges in enforcement, and an overwhelming caseload landing at the NGT's door, often because the earlier checks and balances, like the EIA, appear to be failing frequently.
That accurately reflects the situation described. So what does this all mean for you, our listener? We've seen today that the Indian Constitution itself, under Article 51AG, makes environmental protection and conservation a fundamental duty for every citizen. And complementing that duty, we have this vast array of specialized statutory bodies, the NTCA, NBA, NGT, CPCB, CZA, all meticulously designed over decades with the specific purpose of protecting the environment.
A huge investment in environmental governance infrastructure.
Indeed. So here's the final thought to mull over. Does the continued undeniable necessity for constant high-level judicial intervention, evidenced by the NGT's massive caseload dealing with things like faulty EIAs, suggest a fundamental failure of executive enforcement, maybe a lack of consistent political will? Or is it simply reflecting the overwhelming scale and complexity of the environmental challenges facing a vast, diverse, and rapidly developing country like India, where balancing protection and development is inherently fraught with conflict? Is the system broken or just overloaded? Something for you to think about as we conclude this deep dive.
Thanks for watching. Follow us on Telegram and Instagram. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.